The air in Ogoni land was thick with grief as Ken Saro-Wiwa was laid to rest. His burial was no ordinary funeral, it was a final act of defiance in the shadow of the oil industry's steel giants. Shell's pipelines loomed over his grave, a chilling reminder of the battle he fought and the injustice that claimed his life. The land that received him was poisoned, a testament to the struggle he waged for his people and their environment. The quiet ceremony was watched by mourners and the silent presence of the industry he had challenged. This was not just the end of a life, but a message. The price of speaking truth to power in the Niger Delta could be the ultimate one. Yet even in loss, a seed of defiance was sown. Burying him in his homeland was an act of resistance, a refusal to let his story be erased. The Ogoni people, though heartbroken, gathered to honor their leader and renew their resolve. In the shadow of giants, the struggle for justice was being forged anew. Ken Saro-Wiwa was not alone, he was one of the Ogoni 9. Saturday Dobi, Nordu Eawo, Daniel Gubuko, Paul Levera, Felix Nuate, Baribor Bera, Barinem Kiobel, and John Kapuanen stood with him. Each was a leader, a father, a son, a pillar of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, Mosop. They were teachers, farmers, youth leaders, and public servants, united by a demand for justice and a clean environment. Their activism was peaceful, rooted in facts and the power of assembly. They documented oil spills, gas flares, and the devastation of their land, presenting evidence to the world. Their effectiveness threatened the profits of Shell and the power of the Nigerian military regime. For this, they were branded as traitors and put on trial in a process the world would condemn as a sham. To remember only one is to diminish the sacrifice of all. Their collective courage became the engine of a movement that would not be silenced. Before oil, Ogoniland was a place of abundance, clean water, fertile land, and thriving communities. Shell's arrival in 1958 changed everything. Pipelines cut through farmland, gas flares burned day and night, and oil spills poisoned water and soil. The air grew thick with soot, illness and poverty followed, mangroves died, fish vanished, and farmland became barren. A UN report would later confirm contamination so severe it could take decades to clean. The wealth beneath their feet flowed elsewhere, leaving the Ogoni with only devastation. Mosop was born from this despair, a demand for survival, not charity. The Ogoni people's cry was simple: the right to a healthy life in their own home. Their struggle was a fight against the slow violence of environmental destruction. After the executions, the regime tried to erase the Ogoni 9 from memory, burying them in unmarked graves, smearing their names. But their families refused silence, becoming keepers of the flame. They shared stories, fought legal battles, and kept the world's attention on the injustice. Their resistance was quiet but unyielding, transforming grief into a public cause. By insisting on dignity and remembrance, they kept the case alive and the men's legacy intact. Their courage ensured the Ogoni 9 would not be forgotten. In a military cell, Ken Saro-Wiwa's body was chained, but his mind remained free. He wrote in secret, on scraps on tissue, documenting his ordeal and the farcical trial. Smuggled out by family and lawyers, his writings became a final testimony and a weapon against the regime. He used allegory and metaphor, exposing the corruption and brutality he faced. His words, later published as A Month and a Day, revealed the truth from inside the dungeon. He wrote not with self-pity, but with clarity and courage, focusing on the larger struggle. His final statement, never read aloud in court, declared, "Shell is here on trial. Its day will surely come." These were not the words of a defeated man, but a prophecy. Even in death, he ensured his ideas would live on. His secret writings became evidence in the court of global opinion. The evidence gathered by Mosopi and Saro-Wiwa's prison writings ignited a global outcry. Human rights and environmental groups amplified the Ogoni story, turning a local struggle into an international cause. The injustice of the Ogoni 9's trial shocked the world. Leaked documents revealed Shell's collusion with the military, exposing the true cost of oil. International pressure mounted. Protests, boycotts, and condemnation followed. The Ogoni Nine became symbols of the fight against corporate impunity and environmental injustice. Their story forced the world to confront the human cost of oil. The non-violent, evidence-based strategy of Mossop inspired global activism. Though too late to save their lives, the outcry stained Shell's reputation and changed the conversation. The whisper of protest had become a roar that could not be ignored. Today, the legacy of the Ogoni Nine remains urgent. The land is still scarred, the promised cleanup slow and incomplete. The fight for justice and accountability continues in courts and communities. Shell's settlement brought some recognition, but not true justice. The Ogoni Nine's story is a blueprint for modern activism, non-violent, meticulous, and courageous. Their sacrifice challenges us to question the true cost of our resources. Remembering them is a call to action for environmental justice and human rights. Their unfinished struggle is our inheritance, a plea for a more just and sustainable world.